Let's talk more about chain migration, also about the stories about the personnel shifts. Talk about that, too, with Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, thanks for being here. Just heard James' report. Obviously, you have a piece of legislation that deals with this. But as you look at these numbers, what do you see?
Well, I think it's pretty important that the White House and the Department of Homeland Security has finally released this data. Let's just say that DHS was somewhat tight-fisted with immigration data during the Obama era. But it goes to show that 7 out of every 10 immigrants who come to this country, they don't come because of their job skills or their education. They come simply because they had a family member come here 5 or 10 or 20 years ago. Now, my legislation would allow spouses and unmarried minor children to continue to reunite. I think most Americans want to protect the nuclear family. But it would shift our immigration focus away from uniting extended families, parents and siblings, and you get onto cousins and aunts and uncles, and give green cards out to people who are high skilled, have good education, who are able to come to this country and pay taxes, stand on their own 2 feet, not use welfare. It would actually address that very point that was raised in the segment about immigrants creating businesses. We'd have more immigrants that are going to be more entrepreneurial and have the ability to create more businesses. At the same time, you wouldn't be bringing in so many unskilled workers who are going to compete for American jobs and drive down American wages.
All right, I just want to put it on the screen, the full screen, so people can digest this. Your family-based immigration has accounted for more than 70% of the new immigration to the U.S. over the last 10 years. We're talking 2005 to 2016. So you have 9.3 million new immigrants admitted on the basis of family alone. Total green cards issued during this time, about 13 million. Chain migration, the primary driver of these new numbers. And then you have a study that found every 2 new immigrants bring over, on average, roughly 7 additional foreign relatives to permanently resettle in the U.S. And just the top 4, as we put them up there: Mexico, 1.73 million migrants based on family the last decade; the Philippines, 640,000; India, 614,000; China, 578,000. But there's others: Pakistan, almost 200,000; Iran. What about the security concern aspect of this? Well, how real is that?
So, Brett, it's important to emphasize before we address the security point that just because 70% of all green cards are given out based on family status, that doesn't mean that 30% are given out for jobs. No, because you still have categories like refugees and asylees and so forth. It's only 1 out of 5, barely 6% of green cards are given to immigrants because they have a job offer that's going to pay a high wage and going to contribute to the American economy, where we do have some holes. Now, to bring to the security point, the numbers are obviously independent of the security vetting, but obviously there are some countries where the risk of bringing in a terrorist threat is higher than other countries. For instance, it's a higher threat environment to bring in an immigrant from, say, Syria or Somalia, where you have large terrorist presence, than it is to bring in an immigrant from, say, Luxembourg or from Australia and so forth. And that's a real genuine concern, just because you're increasing the volume of immigrants from those countries, again, based on the random chance that someone from their family immigrated here 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, and straining the system with those kinds of security concerns.
Which is why the administration tried first to do the immigration effort that they did to block certain countries at the beginning and failed in court, and now are continuing that battle. Here's what people say on the other side. They say, listen, this country was formed and bringing us your tired, your poor, your hungry masses. It was formed on being welcoming. And if anything's welcoming, it is about families. That's what people on Capitol Hill who are opposed to this say.
Well, so first I would say we still are going to welcome spouses and unmarried minor children. But at some point, when you have a country, you have to have borders, and you have to make decisions about what kind of immigrants your country needs. Yes, in the 19th century, when we were populating a continent, in the 20th century, when we were trying to fill millions and millions of jobs on automated factory lines, and unskilled and low-skilled workers contributed a lot to our economy. But today, those are the people who have seen the most strain on their jobs and their workplace and their communities. We do need immigrants in some fields, but my legislation is designed to shift from unskilled and low-skilled immigration to more high-skilled immigration that's going to provide workers for some of those critical gaps, while at the same time not putting pressure on the wages of people who work on their feet and work with their hands.
Here's what the Senate Majority Leader said last night to Laura Ingraham.
The President's actually given us an opportunity here by saying he wants to fix DACA, but he doesn't want it all by itself. He wants something with it, and I think the kinds of things you and I are discussing, that Cotton and Perdue are pushing, or exactly what ought to be part of a solution.
So how important was that for him to say?
Very important. Senator McConnell has been consistent in public and in private that he wants to see an end to chain migration if we're going to do anything that would codify DACA. The
so
president
is it the
has
price
been
of admission for DACA?
I think it's a necessary condition. Maybe not the only condition, but a necessary condition. Look, if you give amnesty to 1 or 2 million illegal immigrants who were brought here through no fault of their own as kids, you're going to have at least a couple negative effects. And one of those negative effects is you're going to create a whole new chain of chain migration. The way to control for that negative effect is to stop chain migration.
All right. The other story is this personnel shift, and that possibly Secretary Tillerson is going to leave. Director Pompeo goes to state is the big thing, and then you would go to CIA. Comment on that.
Well, Sarah Sanders said today that she had no personnel announcements to make, and we're in the middle of voting on a very important tax bill in the Senate. So I'll be going back there shortly to cast those votes, where I'm proud to be representing the people of Arkansas.
Would you like to be CIA director?
I'm very proud to be representing the people of Arkansas.
I figured I'd stop with 2 questions there. Senator, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Brett.